Good evening and welcome to Spirit Radio. I am your host, Willie Hassell. Along with my co-host, Lynn Nickerson, we will take you on a journey into the unknown where the paranormal becomes the normal. A journey to a world cloaked in darkness where reality becomes a thin veil. So sit back, relax, and join us as we venture into the shadows, the darkness, the unknown, and back. And good evening once again, and welcome to Spirit Radio, the Paranormal Experience. I am your host, Willie Hassell, your gatekeeper to the dark side, your guide to the realm of the unknown, the unseen, the unthinkable. And she is the always lovely, she is the mystical, she is the mysterious, and she is Lynn Nickerson. Good evening.
Well, good evening, Willie, and how are you doing tonight?
I'm not doing too bad for an old guy.
Oh, come on.
I said for
it's
an old
just
guy.
The cold making you feel that way.
No, I said I'm not doing bad for an old guy, but for a young guy like me.
You doing okay?
Yeah, I'm doing okay. I'm hanging in there. So,
well, it is getting chilly, that's for sure.
It is. So you do something exciting today, I hear, did you?
Today, yes. I went to a conference with Paul and Benino and Bill Hall. Very interesting stuff.
Hey, I was there too. I think I saw you there.
Yes, I think I saw you there last night too when we did our lecture.
Over at the KRI Center in Stratham, New Hampshire.
That's right.
And it was a very, very good time.
Yeah, good time was had by all. We talked about ghosts.
And alternate realities and all kinds of wonderful stuff.
And I bet we know somebody else that knows a lot about ghosts.
Just like we're going to talk about tonight. And so tonight on Spirit Radio, the Paranormal Experience. A chill runs through the air in the death tunnel at Waverly Hills Sanatorium. The Shadow Man hunts cell blocks at the West Virginia Penitentiary in Moundsville. And tonight's guest, Samuel Queen, is co-author of Haunted Asylums, Prisons, and Sanatoriums. And he is joining us to talk about some of his personal experiences while touring and investigating some of the country's most haunted locations where spirits roam free. Samuel tells of chilling experiences in such infamous places as the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum in western West Virginia, Yorktown Hospital in Yorktown, Texas, and many more. And so now, shall we please welcome to Spirit Radio, Samuel Queen. Good evening, Sam.
Hello, Sam.
Hey, good evening. Thank you for having me.
Oh, welcome to the show. Glad to have you on.
Yes, thank you for joining us.
So, I've got to ask
cold
you.
Up there in,
yes, it is.
Yeah, it's a little chilly, yeah.
Yeah, it's like 39 now, and it's just a little too soon for this. It's been hovering in the mid-40s. It's like you can feel snow around the corner. How warm is it where you're at? Georgia, right? Atlanta?
It's been in the 60s most of the day here in Atlanta.
Oh, stop bragging.
Yeah.
I get so tired of hearing that. People in Florida love to rub it in your face.
I know it.
Oh, right.
So, I know that you and Jamie embarked on this endeavor, and I'd like to know, what was your element of interest in this? Were you just kind of along for the ride, Sam? Or were you actually interested in seeking out spirits and finding out what they're all about?
Well, I've been interested in the paranormal for a while as a kid, and I would say my first experience with the paranormal or interest in paranormal was watching Scooby-Doo. So
was what?
Scooby-Doo?
Scooby-Doo.
Got me interested in watching the old shows hosted by Leonard Nimoy and Searcha back in the 70s.
Oh, yeah.
I liked a lot of that stuff. And then, of course, all the ghost hunting shows started coming on about 10 years ago, Ghost Hunters and Ghost Adventures and the like. And I watched these shows, and I had never really had a personal experience up to that point, and I was wondering if this stuff was actually real, or did they kind of trump it up a little bit for dramatic purposes for TV audience?
And that they do, but there's more to it than that,
Oh, right. I was just talking more along the lines of the evidence that they find and that type of stuff, and so you want to try to take them for at face value that they're honest and have integrity and all that type of thing. But you really don't know.
No, you don't.
You actually experience something like that yourself, and so it was a few years ago. We were going, Jamie, my co-author, and I were going on a vacation up to the Niagara Falls area. And she'd been up there before, and so she was researching some places, other places we could go look at while we were up there for as tourists. And she came across an asylum in western New York, and she either heard about it on TV or had seen it on, I think, one of the shows. And she looked and saw that you could go there and pay some money to go in and have a ghost hunt of your own.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a public thing where you get several, as many people as they will allow to come in, and then they'll split you up in groups and go around the building and see if you can have any find anything or make contact or whatever. And so she asked me if I wanted to do it. I said it'd be awesome. All we needed is when I first had seen these places on TV, the places that that we went to in our book,
mm-hmm.
I thought they were just abandoned, and some owner was letting some people walk around in them. I didn't know they were actually living, breathing entities as far as
attractions,
ghost hunts for the public.
Yeah.
And a lot of these are doing it for the good reasons. They're trying to restore the buildings back to what they were. There's a lot of historical
value to it,
and a lot of history in these buildings, and they just had been sitting, most of them, for decades, just going into ruin. So
mm-hmm.
a lot of the people who run these places are using this as an avenue to create some revenue, so they can bring it back up to its pristine before they just sat dormant. So anyway, we went in and over in New York. And we did a ghost hunt, and we talked more about that on the way home than anything else. And we actually got to experience a couple of things. We were very novice; we never had done it before in our lives. And of course, when they took us around the building, showed us around all the hot spots, and just kind of gave us a tour and a little brief background of the area and that stuff. I mean, it was a pretty like a maze, a labyrinth, and especially when you walk around in the dark with a flashlight. And Jamie was a little bit nervous, and she said, "Let's see if we can ask one of the helpers or volunteers if we could walk around with them, if he could show us, and so we wouldn't get lost in there." And so he agreed, and we actually first experienced some flashlight activities where we'd ask a question, and whoever we were talking to would respond by turning on the flashlight, that type of thing. And we actually heard some footsteps walking around where there was nobody at, and so anyway, that just was like, man, that's the first time anything like that's ever happened to me before.
And
so we got back home, and she was very interested in it, and she was researching and trying to find and come to find out other places offer the same type of thing that we've that we experienced, that we've seen on television. And so anyway, she started looking for a book to see if there was actually like a travel log type of book that would give you best ways to contact these people, pricing, all that type of thing. And she didn't find anything, and so she'd been threatening to write a book for years on several different subjects, and she said, I think I would like to maybe write a book about this. And she just had the idea and said I would, ask me if I would help her in it. And I said, sure. And she said her main vision was to have like a travel log of haunted locations, where if somebody's going on vacation and they want to kind of go off the beaten path to find something different, that they could possibly do one of these ghost hunts, or public or even private, that a lot of them do. And so anyway,
it's an excellent idea.
An sample, and we sent it over to several of the well-known publishers, and Llewellyn contacted us, which is a big publisher in paranormal and New Age type things out of Minnesota in the Minneapolis area, and they were very, very interested in it. And they said, if y'all send us a rough draft of what y'all got, if you want to go ahead and embark on this adventure. And we said, great. So we pretty much financed it ourselves, and we went to some of the most haunted locations in the country. And
Sam, at that point, had you written much of anything, or did you just send them like a query letter and then a draft of what you wanted to do? How did you approach that?
Right. It's basically, it was what I'd learned in the classes I took in high school and college. Never even sat down and tried to write any sort of book or anything like that by any means. And Jamie was the same way, but she always felt like she could. She reads all the time, and she said, "I believe I could, relay my thoughts into the page." And especially this is something that's not fiction, where you're having to come up with storylines.
Right.
And that type of stuff.
It's all real.
Yeah, basically, it's just the history of the location, the actual history, the haunted history, and then where we went and did our own investigation and our take of what's going on and what we experienced and that type of stuff. And a lot of books about ghosts, you read about ghost stories and that type of stuff, and the author hasn't been to them, where they focus on one location.
Right.
But this is one of the only books in the marketplace where we actually went to, all of the locations that we're writing about and actually had our own investigation at them.
Sam, go ahead, Willie.
And I was just going to say, how long did it actually take you to do, how many investigations were there in the book?
We did 10.
10.
We did a little bit more than 10, but we kind of rounded it down. 10 sounds like a really good number for a list.
Yeah.
So it took from beginning to actually when we turned in our rough draft, I believe it was about 6. Well, actually, we did all of our investigations in about 5 to 6 months, and then about 4 to 5 months after that, we turned in a rough draft.
Oh, that's
okay.
excellent.
So,
That's good.
So you were doing like about 2 a month or so.
Yes, sir. Pretty much.
So, Sam, how did you decide what category of haunted places you would look at? Why did you choose sanatoriums, asylums, and prisons?
Well, it was just a coincidence, really. Or
Was it? Okay.
Right, because we were looking, of course, that where the public could get into, and it would be easy. And a lot of houses and smaller areas aren't that big on what we were wanting to do.
Right.
Yeah.
So it just happens, of course, and one of the things we were kind of concerned about, doing a private ghost hunt is great because it's just you and there's no tainting of evidence or any of that type of stuff. We were kind of worried about going into some of the public ones we did, but the areas were so big, especially some of the prisons where you're not on top of each other, and you've got some room to actually conduct a serious investigation. Some things, of course, especially with an EVP or something like that, unless you know that you're the only two people in the room, that type of thing, it could be, of course, if there's a group of people, it may be somebody else and not yourself.
Right.
But, some of that stuff we just kind of disregarded. But the EVP stuff, the majority of the stuff that we got was just she and I in the room that we kind of said, okay, that was something there that was not us.
Yep, that cuts down the contamination.
Yeah.
So
it can be tough on public investigations like that, but like you say, if the place is big enough and there aren't too many people, and you can find a little spot to yourselves.
And there's things like museums or lighthouses. There are other places you can go. And I was just wondering why you were sort of focusing on relatively negative places or high energy dramatic places.
Right. Jamie had always had a fascination with insane asylums and that type of
really?
stuff. Just because of the history. Because we just in the recent history have started to understand illnesses for mental illnesses and that type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Back in, even 30 years ago or 40 years ago, if somebody had some sort of mental illness, they would just put them in a room.
It's poorly understood.
Know what to do with them.
And they weren't really necessarily mentally ill.
Yeah. Right. And especially just finding out, it was an eye-opener to me just to find out exactly what went on in these places. And a lot of it was trying to help and be beneficial, but a lot of the doctors and the medicine at that time was just, they didn't know what they were doing.
It was
just
primitive.
trying things to see if that actually helped.
It was almost experimental.
Yeah, definitely, and it's just to be able to see like actual photographs of electroshock therapy and the hydrotherapy type stuff, and
It's frightening.
like I said, it's just people that would have today would probably be with some therapy and some medication and they'd be fine, but back then they didn't really know what to do, unfortunately. And, there was a lot of, like you said, suffering and negative energy in these places. And plus, we thought that these places that had negative energy, they're more likely to have some sort of quote-unquote haunting
activity.
or ghosts wandering around.
Yeah, you're right. Well, I've got to tell you, in your book, you've got a really nice variety. You do have schools, you've got the sanatoriums, the prisons, and the asylums. You've got a nice variety in there. So that leads me to my next question. What is either your favorite, your most favorite haunt, or perhaps your most frightening one in the book?
Okay, it's hard to decide between favorite because I had a bunch of different cool things happen to me, and to kind of back up when I was talking about watching the TV shows, and after going into these places and having the experience I did, everything that they show evidence-wise is real. Because 90% of the things that you've seen, be it EVPs, disembodied voices, shadow people, apparitions, even levitation of objects, and being thrown across the room. We've experienced those things, and
it's amazing.
It's not just the television. It's actually true evidence of things that happen, and all those things happen to us. So I mean, I am I went from being skeptical and wanting to believe to be yes, things like that do happen. I have no idea what they are.
Yeah.
And I don't know if anyone will ever be able to pinpoint exactly the phenomenon that happens. But anyway, but yeah, that stuff is real, and that's people always ask me, is that stuff that they show on TV, does that actually really happen? And I'm saying, yeah, definitely that happens. And but as far as my favorite location, probably was one of them was St. Albans in Virginia.
Okay.
It was an insane asylum, and it was an all-boys school at one time. And the reason being is because I had my first experience with an apparition. Jamie and I had been walking around. It's a fairly big place, and it was a public ghost hunt, and it was kind of a place where you could kind of go. You didn't really have to have a guide, and they could just kind of let you have free range of the place. And we were walking around, and we were doing some EVP sessions and other things in different areas, and it was going later on in the night, and we were getting ready to pack it up and head back to our hotel, and there was a ghost or an entity there they called Red Eyes. It's what all you see is just red eyes kind of going from place to place. And so we'd heard that one of the guides there, they were stationed throughout the building just to make sure that people would get lost and that, or if they needed help or whatever. And they said, Red Eyes had been seen in this area, and so we were like, okay, let's go up there and see if we can see that. But we got up there, there was, the room was kind of crowded, and someone said, hey, they were, it was the Red Eyes was seen down this hallway, and so everybody's kind of milling around, and I was just kind of kept my attention focused on that hallway. And it was kind of dark, not totally pitch black, but there was, a little bit of light in there so you could kind of see. And I was just kind of looking down that area. And people were kind of milling around and talking and that type of stuff. And all of a sudden, I just saw a face just come out of the blackness. Just was kind of gray. It contrasted with the black around it. And it took several seconds for my mind to wrap around exactly what I'm seeing. And it was an expressionless face. It had black spaces where the eyes should be and nose. It kind of reminded me of a Scream mask.
Oh, sure.
From the movie.
Mm-hmm.
And so it just kind of stopped, and it kind of fully, that's all I saw. Nothing, no body or anything like that, just a face. Then I believe it realized that I was actually seeing it. And
That's
so as
spooky.
soon as it had the recognition of me recognizing that, okay, I am actually seeing something that shouldn't be there, it just kind of disappeared and kind of just went back. And then it's a hallway with several rooms, and all of a sudden toward the end of the hallway, I saw the same face kind of pop its head out from the door, and then it go back in again. And at that time, I had Jamie around the arm, and I was squeezing her arm, and she knows me that I don't really get too. I'm kind of really pretty much an even keel person, very calm and collected. And she said she knew something was wrong when I had a death grip on her arm. And kind of there were a lot of people in there that we didn't know, and I didn't want to cause a panic, or I didn't want people to say, "Oh yeah, I saw it too," when they may have not.
Mm-hmm.
So I just kind of whispered in her ear, and I said, "I just saw a face come out of the blackness and look at me." And so we kind of waited till everybody kind of dissipated and left that area, and so we went up and talked to the guy that was there, and I told him my experience, and he said, yeah, that has happened there before. And so I kind of, gave me a little bit of validation then a couple of years later, actually this past fall, the show with that has the medium and the cop on it.
The Dead Files. Yeah.
The Dead Files, right?
Mm-hmm.
They were at that same place at yes, and they're at the asylum, and they did a show there. And of course, toward the end of the show, she sits there and she has a sketch artist draw what she has seen, and she was saying she was seeing something, different beings look out of windows. And so when they had the reveal there of the actual faces that she saw, or the things that she saw there, one of the faces of the three was the exact same face that I saw that night 2 years earlier.
Wow!
And so. And I called Jamie at that point, and I said, "You won't believe it." I said, "I'm sitting here watching the Dead Files, and they're showing the exact same thing at St. Albans that I saw."
That's interesting.
And to me, again, that just gave me further validation that I was not seeing things, that somebody else had that same experience.
Yep, and that the show wasn't all faked either.
Yeah, that's
right.
pretty good confirmation of what you witnessed yourself. Yeah.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
And of course, even after I saw it, and I still tell myself today, I cannot have seen that, because
I know
the rational mind is just trying to tell you that you're just seeing things.
What about the red eyes? What was that supposed to be?
I did not see red eyes, unfortunately, but they said that was an entity that kind of that walks around there, and then when people see them, they always say that they see a couple of bright red eyes.
And then they darted away.
Right.
Well, Mike gave you some good advice there from St. Albans, Mike from St. Albans, and he mentioned something about don't ever ask them to touch you. And he says it's just not a good idea to open yourself up. So he got into that, but Jamie sort of elaborated on that as far as her methodology. And do you want to tell us what you finally developed that you would do as a protection device?
Right. We actually, of course, just from watching the shows and stuff, I said we've never really been fully trained, and I don't know if there's a lot of ghost hunters out there that actually
a lot of them aren't
a trainer.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just just kind of learn your own, just from what you see on TV and that type of stuff, and then from what we heard early on, probably the best piece of equipment that you can have is yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Because once you start knowing what to look for and what to listen for and that type of stuff, and you start opening yourself up to that type of thing, and I believe a lot of people that don't see, they just don't want to. And that's just my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
And, you just have to be involved in it, and you start sensing stuff more. Jamie's more empathic, and she's more open to these type of feelings and sensations and just that type of thing. But when I walk into these places, I feel like I'm walking into Walmart or a bookstore or a gas station. I don't feel anything. But we'll go through the places and, take a tour, and then she'll just kind of whisper to me and say, "I believe we need to come back here later. I think there's something maybe in here trying to talk to us or communicate with us." And, 99% of the time she was right.
Yeah.
She has that.
She's
it kind of
the
runs
sensitive.
in her family a little bit as well.
Uh-huh.
So I think it's just a gift that certain people may have. You can hone that gift. But going back to your point about, having to be touched and that type of stuff, and I'd been asking that, and it kind of got on her nerves a little bit because she didn't want anything touching her without her permission, or even, cause just the things that may cause her to feel or whatever. So I never really thought about it. And then, as you said, when we were in St. Albans, we were, the guys, he was great, and he came at it at a different point of view than we had never heard before. And so, he was talking about, things if you're inviting them to touch you or to try to, take some of your energy, then they may just kind of stay latched upon you if they like you or something like that. And so, of course, I didn't want that to happen to either one of us. So, we stopped doing that, or I did. I don't think she ever did that, but I just kind of stopped. I said, you can communicate with us, but please do not touch us. And we would always say that before we would do any sort of EVP session or flashlight session or any of that type of stuff. And from the most part, we never did experience any actual physical touching. only except that you get the goosebumps and feeling cold spots and that type of stuff, but actually physically,
But you also
wanted to felt that.
had another process that you employ, which is you tell the spirits at the end of your investigation that they cannot follow you.
Right. It's just a thing that we would do.
It's a good thing.
I would say, right. We are actually, both of us are Christians, and we have our own spiritual beliefs and that type of stuff. So when we would go into before we'd even start anything, we would always have a prayer and have prayer that we're just there to talk. We're not trying to stir up anything, and we're not any sort of combative. We don't we treat everything with respect in a respectful manner, just as we would want to be treated as well. But after every night or every investigation, we would sit and we would, before we even leave the property, and say, thank you for communicating with us. We really appreciate it. But the only thing is you can't go with us. You have to stay here.
Yep, that's a good thing to say.
Yeah.
We did that every place except one. We forgot to do it when we were in Yorktown, Texas.
Yeah. How about, Sam, if we're going to have to take a bottom of the hour break, but when we come back, we want to hear about what happened at Yorktown, particularly about the old hag, and then the rest of your investigation, because that one in particular, Yorktown, was fascinating. Okay?
Sure.
So we're talking with Sam Queen, of co-author of Haunted Asylums and Prisons and Sanatoriums, and we'll be back in just a couple of minutes, so don't go away. Supernatural Magazine, the UK's newest paranormal magazine, provides support to Spirit Radio, the Paranormal Experience. It is the magazine's goal to bring every aspect of supernatural news and research from around the world under one roof to create a universal platform for all those interested in the supernatural. More information is available at supernaturalmagazine.com. You are listening to Spirit Radio, the Paranormal Experience on WSCA 106.1 FM, and we'll be right back after this short break.
You're tuned to WSCA 106.1 FM in Portsmouth's West End. And from the community calendar, an author's tea will be held on Sunday, December 14th at 2 p.m. at the Kittery Estates Independent Living Community at 220 State Road in Kittery. The following authors are attending Lane Case, Katie Mason, Maya Bonda, Eileen Doyen, Wanda Kazar, Keely Shea, and Patricia McCabe. Each author will discuss their experiences as writers, sharing some tips about becoming published. Books will be available for purchase. If interested in attending, the contact to reserve a space is 207-438-9111. And I believe we have some more of our upcoming guests on the show.
Yeah, our upcoming guest list starts with November 28th, a paranormal group out of Massachusetts called the Spirit Light Network. They're going to be coming on the show. What they do is investigative work, but they also do clearing of haunted places and helping spirits to move on. And they've just released a book that encompasses the investigative work and the clearing, and they've titled it Ghosts and Shamanic Tales of True Hauntings. On December 5th, Willie and I will be having another paranormal discussion. On December 12th, Bob and Betty Luca will be returning to continue our discussion as chronicled in 5 books by Raymond E. Fowler. And that's our upcoming guest list.
All right, and so now we'll go back to the phone with tonight's guest, the co-author of Haunted Asylums, Prisons, and Sanatoriums, Samuel Queen.
Samuel Queen, yeah.
Samuel Queen. I got co-authors mixed up there. Welcome back, Sam.
Welcome back, Sam.
Thank you.
So we were talking about Yorktown Hospital in Yorktown, Texas. And according to Jamie, this was the most frightening place she had been. Now, while you guys were there, you had some pretty strange experiences. But we were talking in particular, but we'll address this first, on forgetting to ask them or to demand that no one follow you home. And then Jamie had an experience when she failed to do so after leaving Yorktown. So would you tell us about that, Sam?
Sure. And I'm glad that everything, was resolved and nothing was more than what it could have been. But
she did exactly the right thing.
Right, definitely. And it just put it back in our minds. It's okay, we need to do this every time. Because we were about halfway to the hotel, and we had, all of a sudden, I don't remember who thought of it. It was just, we were tired, and all of a sudden I said, oh, we forgot to ask, the spirits that we were speaking with or communicating with to stay there. That they were not allowed or not welcome with us after we left the property. And so, and as you were saying, Jamie had several strange experiences while we were in there, and she just felt uneasy the entire time.
Mm-hmm.
She just, at one point, she just kept feeling of something breathing in her ear, just kind of being menacing toward her and that type of stuff. And so anyway, we tried to say it in the car, but I don't know if I don't believe it worked, because when we got back to Atlanta, she gave me a call and told me that I think it was the first night that she was back. She woke up and every light on in the house was turned on, and she adamantly states that she turns off the lights before she goes to sleep. She didn't fall asleep with all of them on. And then she turned off the lights, and then later on that night, all of a sudden the alarms in the house, the fire alarms kept chirping. Took out batteries, they kept chirping, and just had all these kind of things, and it was making her on edge. And I believe that next morning when she was getting ready to go to work, she was in the garage going to her car. She just felt and heard something just walk up really fast to her.
Ooh.
And that just freaked her out, of course, as you would imagine. And she ended up not going back to the house for a couple of nights. She went and stayed with her parents just because it freaked her out so much, and she called and told me about it. And so what I did was I just, went over there and I told her to do the same thing. And I went over there and just said, just in a voice loud to where the whole house could hear me, and just said, you're not welcome here. You're going to be ignored, and you just need to go ahead and leave and go back to where, you came from. And
but wasn't there one particular entity? Wasn't she visited by an old hag?
Yeah, I think she felt that. I believe she had like maybe a dream or a vision or something like that while she was there at the house.
That's pretty disturbing right there.
Right, yeah, definitely. And it just is a combination of all that other things that happened to her. Of course, just pretty much scared her to death, and she just was like, I can't be there anymore until we figure out what's going on. So she came back, and she did the same thing. She just reclaimed her house and said, this is not going to happen anymore. And if you try to mess with me, I'm not even going to pay you any attention. And after that, the next night that she stayed there, she didn't have any other issues. And I think from the time that she was still in the house, she didn't have any issues of that type of nature or anything like that. So, yeah, just kind of, I guess, reemphasize that, we need to make sure and do that before we leave places. And, like I said, we're always respectful, and we ask, who we communicate with to be respectful to us and to just,
Well, she went on
leave it there.
She said, I found, please listen to me now when I tell you this. This place is straight out of a horror movie. I found my imagination running amok on more than one occasion. The hospital is the scariest place I have ever been. Then she mentions about the coffin episode, that she thought that someone had been murdered there. And I'm not referring to the organ just yet. And she envisioned that Mike, the tour guide or the owner, was building her coffin in the backyard. She just had the creeps. Right. Yeah. It was. Like I said, I didn't feel any malice coming from him. Right, and or nothing like that. It was just her imagination got a little bit run away with her. But yeah, because you see this place, and if you ever seen a picture of it or one of the shows,
It does. It's very dilapidated, and
Ominous.
If it was in the middle of nowhere, but it was on a fairly busy street.
Mm-hmm.
If it was in the middle of nowhere, I don't think I could have walked in there or even got her to do it. But everything's just very dusty, and it's he was doing some repair work, I think, in the back. It was just the two of us in the hospital,
Mm-hmm.
And then just all the negative feelings that she had throughout the night. It just, her imagination kind of got away with her, and she didn't mention anything to me at that time. It was just something, a humorous anecdote that she put in the book. But yeah, she did. And when we'd call Mike, we had his cell phone number, and he lived on the property, and he would just kind of appear.
Oh.
When we would, but he knows his way around there. He just need a flashlight and all that type of stuff. So there's nothing wrong with Mike. He was a great guy, and a nice guy. You could ask for to help, to show us the ropes of the place we were at. But yeah, her imagination was running a little bit wild with her at that point. But she did have some crazy kind of things that were bothering her and testing her, I think, while we were there.
Well, the organ, Sam. She wasn't too far off about the organ. The organ gave her the creeps. And she thought that it had been owned by a serial killer. So you want to follow up on that?
Right. I believe that was one of the claims, and I don't think we were able to get any sort of validation one way or the other. I think it's more likely just a story.
Sort of anecdotal, but it's interesting that it closely parallels one of her fears that she anticipated when she saw the organ.
Right.
And it was kind of a strange way the information came to her, but do you want to mention what that was?
As far as what now?
Do you want to mention what the information was? She had been told that the organ had belonged to someone who killed somebody, or so he actually was. He was murdered.
Yeah, it was. I believe. I'm sorry. This was her story, and it's a.
Oh, well, it was a woman. She told me this woman was talking to Jamie. She purchased the organ from an estate sale. She later learned from the estate caretaker that the previous owner had picked up a man and taken him home. And after a night of partying, he didn't come down to breakfast. So the caretaker of the house discovered him.
Right.
Murdered.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's pretty creepy.
So, It is, and they then just that organ there, and then also it was a Catholic church, and they had their own separate like a little chapel.
Oh,
They had confessional, they had a pulpit, they had the organ there, and they had I think they actually used it as a church on the weekends. For the community.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't just for the people that actually were in the hospital or admitted to the hospital, that type of thing. And this is just a standard medical hospital.
Mm-hmm.
They had birth, of course, a lot of deaths there, trauma center, all that type of stuff. But that kind of what creeped me out a little bit is just to see that there, and would just it always people say that if you go into church by yourself, it always kind of gives you the creeps a little bit, which
it's overwhelming.
Church is supposed to be a safe place to go. But anyway, yeah, that the whole thing, that whole day or that evening, and that stuff with her, it just messed with her.
Well, how about
also,
you? How did you feel about Yorktown?
I thought it was okay. I mean, I did not have one bad feeling in there. Just the outside of it, and just the just as you said, a creepiness level.
Mm-hmm.
But nothing really has bothered me or felt menacing to me while we were there. And we got some EVPs from that night we were there, saying her name several times.
That's
and they
right.
want Jamie.
Yeah.
And that's what really freaked her out too, because when I said you got to listen to this and tell me what you think it says, and she said, and then her face just was white, and she said, they're saying my name. And I was like, yes, they are. That's what I think they're doing too. So who they are and why they wanted her, we don't know, and I don't think she ever wants to know.
Yeah, that gets pretty personal.
Yeah, it is kind of strange when you actually get EVPs calling you by name.
Yeah.
Yes, it does. It's a sensation that it's hard to explain unless you actually have it happen to you.
That's right. Yeah, it's unworldly. We've only got maybe 10 more minutes left, Sam, so I
Okay.
did want to ask you about the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum. And
Okay.
what intrigues me about that is you wound up having a conversation with a Civil War soldier rather than,
Right.
a patient. So would you like to talk about that?
Oh, sure. Yes, that was another favorite place. It's a beautiful
good.
building, and they're doing great work restoring it. Originally, Trans-Allegheny was a Civil War. They had a training there as well as a hospital.
Okay.
And so when we were walking around, as I was telling you earlier, and just to say that I know I didn't mention this before, but we didn't really go into a lot of or owning a lot of equipment or specialized equipment, just because of what we were doing and how we were doing it. We didn't want to have DVR systems and cameras set up when we weren't there. Basically, everything was taken care of. What we could carry. We just had basic stuff. We had just a recorder. We had an IR camera. We had a K2 meter, and just a couple, some flashlights, and just a few things like that. So anyway, we were walking around in the tour, and we actually took a historical tour earlier in the day since they offered it, and we wanted to get as much information about the place that we could. And so we were into one of these rooms, and they said that at one point it was used as a quote unquote rubber room, where they would put rubber on the walls, hang it up so the patients wouldn't hurt themselves by hitting their heads against the walls or whatever. So we were in there, and Jamie had a feeling, and she said, "I think we need to come back in here later." And so we did. And so and one of the people that were leading us around had said, you get some false positives on K2 meters and that type of thing, and mel meters, and it's just there's a surge of some electrical wires that is going through some of the rooms and stuff. So when we first walked into that room, I had the K2 meter, and it was just pegged all the way to red, and it was not moving. And I was like, okay, we must be in one of those rooms that they're talking about. And so I just kind of didn't really think anything else about it and sat it down. And then we started, we sat some flashlights down, some mag lights. We had 3 different colors, and set them up in different places just so we could make sure that we were actually communicating with somebody, and they were using the the color that we asked for, or used one for yes, one for no, that type of thing.
Oh, yeah.
We were actually getting a lot of good flashlight activity, standing there asking questions. And so when we were going through the list of who are we talking to, because that's one of the things, of course, you would like to know. One of the first things, and we asked, are you a patient here? Or were you a patient here? Nothing. Were you on staff here? Nothing. Were you a family member that came through visiting? Nothing. And then all of a sudden, I started thinking about the Civil War that it played a part in that kind of era. And said, were you a soldier? And all of a sudden, it lit up. And so, and we kept validating. Okay, so you are, a soldier. You fought in the Civil War. You were here at some point during that time period. And so, from what we were to gather and the information that we got, we did get an EVP that had an accent. And as you know, some Europeans fought in the Civil War for both sides, actually. And so we believe that we were talking to a captain. We believe that was what the EVP said. And so when we, after we got back, and so anyway, we were in the investigation, and we just kind of had a feeling that whoever we were talking to was wanting to reveal themselves to us. And so we, and of course, Jamie is just this is the way she is. She was really not scared, but she was really nervous, I guess you would say, about actually seeing something like that in such a small confined space, especially like a full-bodied apparition or anything. And so we ended up turning all the lights off, and the flashlights and actually the camera and everything. We just sat there in the dark, and all of a sudden something hits Jamie in the leg and hits the ground, and she said, "I think they just threw a rock at me." And so during this time when we were waiting for whoever it was to make themselves known to us, and this is nothing that came up from the ceiling. There was nothing like that. It was something off the floor. There was some pebbles, some little pieces of mortar maybe, and she saw it come, vertically at her leg, and then all of a sudden just, hit the floor. And, that was just, we just were very excited that actually happened. And you hear her on the recording say, I think she's still rocking me. And so you do hear it actually hit her leg, kind of bounce on the floor a couple of times.
Well, why do you think he did that? Just to get her attention?
Yeah, I'm assuming so. And then when we kind of wrapped up with that, I got the K2 meter out just to see, and I had nothing. And as I was telling you earlier, that it was pegged the whole way, and I was thinking that there was some sort of, some false positive on this. But I went to every inch of that room, every corner with the K2 meter, and it didn't blip one time.
Really?
So with that, with the little rock that was thrown at her, to the EVPs we got and the flashlight, I have no doubt in my mind that we were communicating with a ghost.
Yeah.
Or a spirit, or
likelihood.
whatever you want to label it as. But that was just that was probably the one place that we were at of anything, of the one part of any of the investigation. We had so many things happen to us that it kind of just kind of backed up, what was going on there at that time.
Did he sound? Both Jamie and my family came from Scotland and Ireland. You mentioned that. So did this ghost seem to have an accent of some sort? You said, like Scottish or Irish?
Right. It's a possibility. It's. I mean, it could have been French.
Okay.
But, right. And so we feel like it said the word captain, and so it was an English captain, but it had a very thick accent to it.
Oh, okay.
So we were really unable to discern exactly what type of accent it was, but it is an accented voice.
Okay. Well, real quickly, we got a couple of minutes, don't we?
Yeah, we got about 3 minutes.
Okay. The Farrar School. Jamie had a really interesting experience there, didn't she? She thought she was talking to an angel.
Actually, that was as a possibility. I believe that was when she was talking to maybe a family member of hers. When she was talking to the angel, that was actually out in Tooele.
Totally. Okay, the hospital.
Yes, ma'am.
Right,
and,
okay.
Yeah, that was an odd experience. We've never had experienced anything before or since. We were in a room that was I believe it was a delivery room or an infant care room. And so we were in there, and of course we were going through the standard questions and that type of thing. And you just felt at peace.
Oh, really?
And we both did, yes. And she just said that she had felt, just at peace, and that she just felt that she was being protected, and something that we had never experienced doing anything like this before, going into and doing these paranormal investigations. And it was a very lengthy session that we had in this room. And like I said, nothing like, and a lot of it's personal, and she didn't really want to elaborate more than what she did in the book. But she just felt like she was comforted and felt like that there is you can have peace on the other side once you leave this realm of Earth.
That was in the nursery, right? Where they delivered babies or in the nursery.
Right.
It would stand to reason that there might have been a real calming effect in there with the babies coming into the world.
That's a possibility. And when there was I kept seeing look like some dark shadows that were trying to enter the room.
Really?
But they were, for whatever reason, they were unable to while we were in there at the time. They were just kind of on the periphery of the outside of the door. They would not actually come into the room. They were like, and there's a possibility there was a force kind of keeping whoever was out there out.
Oh, that's very interesting.
That's interesting, yeah.
Right.
No, that must have been a moving experience for her.
It was very deep, meaning experience, and it just, like I said, it was just it was one place that we walked out of that we felt good.
Good.
And, you know,
Well, that's
yeah,
good.
so it was a very moving experience for sure.
Some of those places really can either be negative or just downright frightening. But we are just about the end of the hour now, Sam. Would you like to give out how people can get a hold of you, your book, your website?
Oh, sure. We actually, our webpage, or we have a Facebook page, is Haunted Asylums, Prisons, and Sanatoriums. And you can get the book at Llewellyn.com, BarnesandNoble.com, Amazon.com, any place that sells a book. You can find it, and you can get, if you'd like to post or send us a message, you can go through that Facebook page if you're
Okay.
if you're a Facebook user.
And you've got another upcoming book, is that right? Haunted Hotels?
Yes, Jamie is working on a haunted hotels book at this present time. I'm unfortunately not involved in that.
Oh, okay.
But she is doing this pretty much the same similar type of scenario with this book. She's doing some history of the hotels and actually staying in some of the haunted rooms and actually doing an investigation there.
She's doing it by herself?
No, her husband is
going
going with her. So he's backing her up and helping her out with the investigation. So I cannot wait to read it. And so she's actually in the middle of doing that for herself.
Well, I know one hotel that she's going to have to go to. We'll send you an email with the name of it.
Sounds great.
And when is that due out?
My favorite one is the Stanley. I love the Stanley in Colorado.
Well, this sounds very much like that, but it's not the same one.
Okay.
When is that due out, Sam?
I'm not sure. I think she's going to have her rough draft in sometime before the end of the year.
Okay. All
probably
right,
within
great.
the next year or so.
All right, well, at the end of the hour, so thank you so much for coming on. You've been delightful. And say hello to Jamie for us. Our pleasure.
Yes, thank you very much, Sam. We enjoyed talking to you. And
I enjoyed it, too. I could talk about this stuff for hours.
Oh, I know. Wish we had another hour to fool around with. Well, you have a good evening.
Thanks, guys. Y'all, too. Thank you very much.
Good night.
Thank you, Sam. Good night. All right. Well, okay. I guess that's the end of Spirit Radio, the Paranormal Experience, for another week.
And thank you, everyone, for listening. You have a good evening.